Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Salvatore. Can you put in the chat if you can hear me? Um, I'm so excited to have you all here, and I actually am as new as most of you probably are. Yes, I'm so glad you can hear me. That's fabulous. Part of what it means to be new is I don't have anything up on my walls yet, as you can see. And part of what it means to be new is I'm still getting used to the computer, including the sound. So thank you for kind of confirming that everything's okay. So I am the brand new academic head in the psychology department. I'm new not just to the department, but also to JMU entirely. So I have been learning so much about the way that our program and the social work program are situated within the College of Health and Behavioral Studies. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today, the things I've learned, what I find most exciting about it, some things that you'll need to know. I'd like to invite you to go ahead and put questions in the chat as they occur to you. So number one, that will work best. I can see the chat and that way I can address your question as soon as I see it. But then also, if I am not sure about the answer to one of your questions, you'll be really helping me by posing it, by kind of pointing to things that I need to learn more about as well. So again, welcome. It's funny for me to say that because, I'm new too, right? But I think I am delighted to be here. And part of what I'm so delighted about is just the many opportunities that are available in these programs. So I'll go ahead and get started here. Let me see. All right. So you are part of a powerhouse college. So you've got the university level, right? But then there are different academic units that are called colleges. For example, the College of Arts and Letters. But we're in the College of Health and Behavioral Studies. It's the largest of the colleges with about 6,000 total undergrads, 8 undergraduate programs, and a wide range of accredited master's and graduate and doctoral programs. The largest of the units within this college is not psychology, but it's a close second to health sciences. And then social work is actually substantially smaller. But this is a very, very interesting, vibrant college. So just to give you a flavor of many of the things that are going on in the college, Health and Behavioral Studies partners with a lot of community organizations via the Institute for Innovation in Health and Human Services. So here on the left, you can see a wide range of the types of clinics and programs that students can work with, collaborate with as part of fieldwork. I'll be saying a little more about fieldwork opportunities later, but this is like one of the key ways that fieldwork occurs in the college. In the middle here, I'm pointing to the fact that JMU has a collaboration with the area hospital. And for those of you who are interested in psychology, and to maybe a lesser extent, but also those of you who are interested in social work, there's actually a rich set of opportunities to work on both adult and inpatient psychiatric wards in this region, but the hospital also does things beyond that as well. So just a whole range of cooperative projects that are possible through that collaboration. And then we've got the Morrison Bruce Center, which is focused on the well-being of women and girls. And this is not an exhaustive list of all the things that are happening in the college that undergrads can get involved in, but I think it's nice to start with just a flavor of a small subset of what's possible to give you a sense of how you can kind of enhance your experience beyond the basic requirements of these majors. All right. So I know I've started talking about this to some extent, but I also want to say that there are 4 buildings that comprise the college. There's sort of the main building, which social work is in. And then there's another building, Miller, that those of you who are declared psychology majors will be having a lot of your classes in. And there are a couple other buildings as well. And in each of these, there are state-of-the-art laboratory facilities. What you see here on the left is somebody working in the standardized patient labs. So some of the other colleges' programs use these labs more frequently to make sure that they are basically working on bedside manner and working on their clinical skills, right? Very cool types of labs. The dietetics program has a kitchen. When I was being recruited into this position, looking at all of these different labs was actually like a very exciting part of seeing all the things that undergrads could be involved in. right away. You don't have to be a master's student to do this stuff. Study abroad, a wide range of study abroad experiences. I want to give you a quick flavor of some of the study abroad opportunities, because I really love that JMU has a number of opportunities that aren't just in Europe, right? So for example, Costa Rica, Ghana. These are some of the places that people in psychology have gone in the not too distant past. This summer, there was also a study abroad in Scandinavia. So that was about the good life in Denmark and Sweden. So, don't sleep on study abroad opportunities. If there are questions about where that could fit in, I'd be more than happy to take them as we go through this. Research. I will definitely be talking more about both research and field work. But again, these are things that are great opportunities available in the college and kind of characteristic of what's exciting and unique about the college. And then off to the right, we have a focus for the college on interdisciplinary and interprofessional education. So these are the kinds of things that synergize across the units of the college. And they are pretty cool. All right. So I wanted to try to put the context of the college in the greater mission and vision of James Madison as a university. You've probably heard some of this language about the mission and vision, especially the vision of being a national model for engagement. So I underlined some of the words in the mission of the college that I think are kind of the keywords that connect upwards to the university as a whole. The first being that word engagement. And the second being this phrase, inspire responsible contributions to our world. I think these are important phrases and keywords to keep in mind when we're thinking about the way that your time at James Madison would be structured in your likely 4 years as an undergraduate. So the way we think about that is that the experiences that you have through your time at James Madison, which are the engagement pieces, are the sort of downstream mediators of becoming, that responsible contributions to the world piece, like living purposeful lives. And the thing I want to emphasize here is the idea that none of this happens kind of naturally or magically, but that many, many opportunities are there, but that you have to take the initiative to do the engagement piece. You have to reach out to some of those opportunities, right? So that getting from that engagement piece to the purposeful lives piece, it really depends on you figuring out what your values say, what it means to you to live a purposeful life, and figuring out which engagement pieces you can reach out to people to get involved in. So there's such a wide, I would use the metaphor of a buffet of opportunities that I think talking about this piece that you have to take sort of the active initiative to figure out what engagement pieces you're going to pick up on, that becomes pretty important. But this is how we think about how those two things go together. Okay, can I get a show of hands? I appreciated what you all put in the chat before, so let's do that again. So how many people have seen this circle before of the 120 credits that are necessary for an undergraduate degree? This time I don't expect to have as many yeses and I'd also take no's. Okay, cool, Alexia, you have, hopefully I pronounce names correctly. I'm glad to see some yeses, but if you're sitting here thinking, I can't actually say that I've seen this before, that's okay. I'm showing it to you because it's pretty important, right? This circle, it shows you the kind of main buckets of where credits will fall into. So it's helpful to think of the 120 credits that I'm going to take in my time here. About a third of them, 41, will be in the general education program, which is sort of the core liberal arts program that everyone at the university takes if they're an undergrad. Then there'll be another about a third, maybe slightly more, of major courses. And then the remaining third is elective classes and requirements that are tied to the major. So part of why I show you this is to sort of help conceptualize those thirds, but then also part of why I show you this is every year we have people, this has been described to me, graduate or attempt to graduate, apply to graduate, who actually don't realize somehow that although they've completed all the general education requirements and all of the courses in the major and maybe all of these other requirements, they're not up to 120 credits. So someone who gets to the end of senior year and has 118 credits and applies to graduate is going to be really disappointed when they discover that they're not quite able to do so. So I think this is something to really keep in your mind. 120 is the magical number of credits you need. And these are things to start talking to your advisor about right away. Anything you're not sure about how general education works or what other requirements there might be, your advisor is a great resource for that. If you are going to add a minor, it would come out of that third bucket. So this is where I like to point out the rich array of possible minors. Now on this slide, I'm emphasizing pre-professional health minors because that again is like a strength of the college. But you know what? If you Google JMU minors, the list is so long that I couldn't put it on this one screen. Like you could get a minor in Arabic literature. Well, I made that one up, by the way, so maybe you couldn't get a minor in Arabic literature, but you could get a minor in a wide range of things that are not necessarily just within our one college. So this is a great place where you could wind up taking classes that are outside of the College of Health and Behavioral Studies. As a side note, there is no minor in either social work or psychology. So Molly, I see your question and I'll read and respond to that in a second, but let me just say this. So it's exciting to me that you all are already declared psychology or social work majors, because that's really giving you a leg up to get into the relevant classes in those programs. As a minor, you would also have an advantage for getting into classes in the minor programs, but there is actually nobody who is a psychology minor, for example, who then also has an advantage to compete with you to get into these classes here. Okay, Molly's question. Does this requirement make it impossible to graduate early? So glad you asked that, Molly. I'm not even going to read the second part of your question until I answer that. No, you can graduate early. So people do sometimes graduate in 6 or 7 semesters. It's not necessarily that common, but it's also not impossible or disallowed in any way. Okay, now I'll read the second sentence. If someone wanted to do that, how would they complete 120 in 3.5 or 3? Yeah, so let's do the math really quickly on what you need to average to finish in the sort of canonical four years. So that would be 120 divided by 8 semesters, so 15 credits per semester. So in order to complete in 6 or 7 semesters, you would want to think in terms of taking closer to 19 or 20 credits per semester. If you divide it out, speak with your advisor about making sure you're able to do that. I would strongly encourage you not to overburden yourself in your very first semester. But then after that, I think it's not all that uncommon for people to be taking a larger number of credits. It requires, this is a great opportunity for me to kind of double emphasize, it requires forward planning. So the faster you start talking to your advisor about things like that, the better. Yeah. Okay. And I see a second great question here. When will we be able to declare a minor? The answer I've heard about this, talk to your advisor, but the answer I've heard is that you can declare a minor after or maybe at the end of your first year. But I'm not 100% confident that that is the correct answer. Sorry, this again is one of those things where my newness, this is like a level of detail that I'm only about 90% confident on. So Geneva, if you know the answer and you want to jump in, or anyone else who has JMU academic affairs experience, feel free to jump in. I won't feel like you're stepping on my toes, but I would also encourage you to double check about minors with your advisors. And that question about timing, I love it. Okay. Yeah, all right. Great questions. Thank you for those. Okay, so let me pivot a tiny bit and talk a little bit about the difference between psychology and social work. Although I think most of you in the room are probably declared psychology majors or in the Zoom, an interesting thing about the difference is that people sometimes encounter psychology in high school and they rarely kind of encounter social work through high school classwork, right? So what happens with social work is actually that people discover that major and the major grows over time. It starts small and grows, right? And so I like to talk about these because they're so similar I think people who declare psychology and people who declare social work, there's a lot of shared values, motivations, but the two departments and programs have very different feel and culture to them, which you can see by looking at the mission statements for these two programs. You know, some keywords in social work are advocacy, justice, right? And a very key word in psychology you can probably guess is the word science. Now, social work too is also empirical. It's also evidence-based, right? But psychology is, clearly saying something about the emphasis of the program. There's a little bit more information about how each of these programs conceptualize what they're up to, right? The BSW program, so Bachelor's in Social Work, is about strengthening community life, promoting social justice. Whereas the BA or BS in psychology, those are both options, are about, again, psychological science, right? So these, again, they have very different culture and feel. And I think, if you have any questions about what that looks like, we'll say a little bit more about it, but I'm happy to kind of take those questions as well. The curriculums also look a little bit different, although again, very similar types of underlying concerns about human beings, right, in these two programs. So both programs start with a sort of core of foundational knowledge. In psychology, that would be Psych 101 and Psych 160, which is so 101, general introduction to psychology. 160 is our lifespan development class. And social work has some analogous foundational knowledge courses. Then they move in slightly different directions. So consistent with a sort of focus on science and psychology, we then go on to a methodology core that consists of statistics and methods. Whereas social work is continuing to look at research and theory in social work, but also starting to work on those practice skills that social workers are going to rely on. So starting to think about how to talk to people, how to sit with people who are having really tough time, right? How to be in the presence of difficult situations. And in years 2 and 3, psychology then moves into content core things, whereas social work is sort of emphasizing that upper level practice skills. And then psychology and social work both end with a capstone experience. Social work's capstone experience is a fieldwork experience. And they actually end with a slightly notorious but powerful oral exam where they sit down in the room with social work faculty and discuss a case. And passing that oral exam is part of graduating from that program. Psychology has a different kind of capstone experience. In fact, it's a set of options that you can take from a senior seminar to a fieldwork experience to a research experience. What am I leaving out? There are a number of options basically for doing a capstone in psychology. And that brings me to some of the things that could be a capstone in psychology, a little bit more about them. So research opportunities are optional in both psychology and social work. They do earn credit toward the major. In social work, that happens at the 400 level, so near the end. In psychology, you can do early sort of sophomore-ish level, 200 level research opportunities and then build into more independent work at the 400 level, the capstone. So that Psych 403, that is what I'm kind of thinking about in terms of capstone potential. And this is a really cool feature of what's possible in both departments. I want to say particularly in psychology. So right before I moved here this summer, I was at a conference in Puerto Rico where there happened to be a pretty strong contingent of JMU undergrads, and they were presenting their work, right? Just like I was. But doing so with a lot of professionalism. And it's really nice to see that JMU is underrating those types of opportunities with some funding, but also sort of across the board support for having done the project in the first place. Okay, now the keyword on this slide is optional. So if this is again a situation where it's an incredibly vibrant opportunity, it's a powerful opportunity, but if you want to pursue it, you have to take the initiative to pursue it. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about fieldwork opportunities, and those again are optional in psychology. but they're required in social work. So you can again see this emphasis in social work is a bit different. So in psychology, you would do an earlier sort of 200 level experience. And then in senior year, if you were doing that as your capstone experience, you would have a field placement of 150 hours. And it's supplemented with a research component. In social work, this is actually really core to the program, that there's going to be a fieldwork experience. So learning those skills is integrated all the way in the curriculum from start to finish. And then you end with this much more extensive. So it's more than 3 times as many hours of field experience in that practicum. And then of course that oral exam I mentioned earlier. Here you see also a set of the practicum settings. And this again is not an exhaustive list, but just gives you a flavor of what's possible. I'll pause briefly to see if anyone wants to drop a question into the chat about either research or fieldwork opportunities in these 2 majors. Okay, I see a question. I just noticed that some of these have been direct messages to me, so that means that not all of you are seeing them. So I'm going to read this one out so that everyone can see it. And thanks to those of you who are bringing forward these great questions. So although optional for psychology, how much would you say would benefit someone if they did field work for psychology? I love that question. It kind of segues into where we're going next, which has to do with the idea that, so social work is one way to think about it is as a profession, it's a profession, right? You're preparing mostly to be a social worker or something close to being a social worker. Psychology is a little bit different in that it can prepare you for so many different things. I'll show you a range of possible career opportunities momentarily. So to answer the question, how much would it benefit someone to do field work for psychology? I think this is a good thing to talk with your advisor about, to make it about you. So I think field work is extremely beneficial if you're going in certain directions. Anything that would involve working with people, human services, maybe forensic psych, I think field work is critical. You want to be able to show when you're leaving JMU that you've had those experiences, you've made some of the rookie mistakes and gotten them out of the way in a more structured environment. You've made connections to mentors who can write you letters of recommendation. Now, for other people who are maybe not going to go in that direction, maybe you're going to be a technical writer, right? Then I think what you want to work on is skills related to, technical writing, which maybe isn't fieldwork related, right? So Alexei, I love that question. The question of how much it benefits people, and the reason why these things are optional as opposed to required for the major is exactly that people end up going in so many directions that the question of which things to pick on the buffet of opportunities or possibilities has everything to do with sort of developmental advising in terms of where you individually want to go. I hope that answer makes sense. Feel free to shoot me a follow-up message. I'm happy to take direct message questions. I'm also very happy if you all want to put, I don't know if you're able to, but put your questions into the main chat so everyone can see them. Either way is totally fine. Okay. So again, I'll switch gears a little bit and then we'll talk about careers a little later. So I would like to just share with you some things that in my 20 years of college level teaching, I've seen as important for student success. And it turns out that, that's not unique to other places I've been. It is also important here. And I'm going to talk about some things that are kind of unique to JMU. So the first thing I would recommend is to really set an intention to seek out those relationships with various employees, not just faculty, also our staff, who are amazing. As an example of this one, I would suggest taking advantage of faculty office hours. So the reason I bring this up is, it sounds so obvious, but I think that students sometimes have the impression that if they go to office hours, they're sending a message to the faculty member that they are struggling, which may be true, but maybe is not the message that they wish to be sending, if that makes sense, right? Or they're sending a message that they kind of can't do things on their own, or just any number of things that they're not attempting to send to the faculty member. So what I want to tell you is that although students who are struggling in various ways do come to our offices, and we have a lot of resources that we can send them to, and we can also just be a listening ear. But actually, when students show up in our offices, I think faculty across the board will assert that the message that they send to us by doing so is actually very much like, this person is not being a passive recipient of the education that they're getting. They're active, they're taking that initiative. It's a really positive signal that people send by showing up in our offices. So any hesitation you might have about doing so, I encourage you to really set that intention to sort of be brave and go and see how it goes, and then try again with other faculty members as well, because things will really vary across faculty members, but faculty office hours are incredible and underused resource. Okay, my second thing I would like to suggest to you is think about ways to engage in class. For example, on the very first day of class, you could get a couple of phone numbers, create a group me, and share information with each other. If people, need to miss class for whatever reason, that's a great way to do it. It's unfortunate to get past the first exam and then realize you have some questions. For whatever reason, you think that another student would be best positioned to answer those. Other students are incredible resources, but you don't know how to contact the person who sits directly next to you in class, right? So I would say get those phone numbers early. And go ahead and create that micro community within each class of support for studying. It does take a little extra work, but it really, really, really pays off. I also want to give myself some advice that I'm giving you, which is to take advantage of the things on campus. To give a non-academic example, I'm coming from an institution that has a gym, but it's not remotely as great as UREC, right? So I have been spending this summer a lot of time exploring the University Recreation Center, discovering that you can literally rent things like canoes and take them away with you to explore the beauty of the natural world around JMU. These kinds of things are great ways to not be kind of always in a rabbit hole of stress and studying. But in terms of getting involved on campus, I also want to point to some of the resources that are explicitly set within a particular building. So if you're not here on campus today, which is what I assume is true for most of you at least, then I can't point to the building, but it's right there. So pretend I'm pointing to it. It's a single building called the Student Success Center. And this building represents that JMU has been incredibly thoughtful about structuring resources in such a way that they are as accessible as possible to all students. So if you go to the Student Success Center and you come in the first floor, I've done this in the last couple of weeks, right? You will see right in front of you ways to connect to all of these services and more that are just very findable. And I was actually lurking outside the Center for Multicultural Student Services, and somebody popped out and kind of snared me, if that makes sense, right? If you take the initiative to get yourself into the first floor of this building, I think you'll find it's a very welcoming space, right? Where you don't necessarily have to take the last step of being super brave and walking inside places, but you'll find that there's a lot of welcomingness. I am also happy to take questions about what these various services do. I have some more information that I can pull up to help assist me with that if you have questions about what, for example, what happens at the Science and Math Learning Center. Okay, wait, I'm just going to back up for a second because I want to make sure I make another point that I probably should have on this slide, and it has to do with flexibility. So I've been using this metaphor quite a bit about the buffet that's available at James Madison. But as you know, with a buffet, sometimes the thing that you were looking at, just the last of it gets scooped up by someone else, right? So as a first-year student in particular, there may be situations where you are not getting into classes because other people have gotten into them ahead of you who pre-registered last year, right? And in that situation, I just want to encourage you to think of that buffet and think about what you would do in that situation, right? Like, they're not going to be able to make more for you this year. That's weird in a buffet metaphor, tonight, right? So what you would do is kind of figure out what your next best option is, and try to be as flexible as possible. Then you will get into the things that you want. You will be able to find the thing that you want to eat or the class to take, right? It does require a little bit of sort of tolerance of that. Like, if you came to this buffet specifically to eat one thing, you might be disappointed for a while, right? That is a possible thing that happens at buffets. So I'm just sort of planting that seed, particularly for people who are coming in as first-year students rather than transfer students. Okay. So I bet many of you, if not all, are coming out of high school programs. So 4 years ago, you were looking ahead and thinking, that's a long time. High school is a long time. But now if you look back on those 4 years, you might go like, that went so fast. And James Madison is going to be just the same. So like, it may feel like the upcoming 4 years are, like the end is very far away, but you're going to feel exactly the same way about how fast it went at the end. And in fact, a sort of joke that I would make here, but I gather it's not a joke at all, is like, parents and guardians, make your reservations for graduation now, like for 4 years from now, make them now. So I always thought that was a joke, but I've been told it's really not, like it's serious. Okay, I'll pause briefly to address a question that I see here in the direct messages. Any advice for someone who's planning to work during their freshman year? Yeah, can you give me a little more information? I'll talk about what I think you might be getting at, but let me know if you mean work full-time or work, for example, campus work study. I worked all the way through undergrad, so I love this question. It is very, very, very common to have a 10 or 12 hour a week campus work study job. I've already verified that that's common here, just as it's been at all of the past institutions I've worked at. And the advice for someone who is doing work study is, well, first off, I think it's nice to try to find a work study job that will serve you in a way that is on top of money. So if you can kind of unfix the pie of your time and be able to, make a connection to someone who would be professional recommendation, as well as working for the purpose of making money, that's awesome, right? If you're not able to do that, that is also okay. But that is one piece of advice I have, because then the second piece of advice I have is to really try to be present in the different things you're doing. So for example, when you're working, try not to stress about class, right? That means that time is kind of a refuge from your class thinking time, your studying time. But I do think working more than that 10 to 12 hours a week takes a lot of planning, and that doesn't mean that people can't and don't do it. But I think if you see opportunities to work on time management skills, which there absolutely are at the university, like really jump on those opportunities, because they're gonna pay off in terms of your ability to be able to do more with your time. I'm happy to take follow-up questions if you want to like specify which of those situations you're thinking of. I also see a question from someone else, but I think it's on a similar theme, which is, what is a good way to find psych applicable jobs? And can you let me know if you're thinking jobs on campus or jobs off campus? So this person says, I'm also on a pre-physician's assistant track. That's what I think you're saying. And it seems hard to find jobs in the field of a physician's assistant. Okay, so assuming I understood the question correctly, I, again, really love that question. So okay, so I'm seeing either on or off campus, but preferably on campus. So I would encourage you and other people who have this question about how to find jobs to immediately liaise with campus work study. Even if you are actually not eligible for work study funding, they maintain all sorts of awareness of jobs. And I think that is really your go-to campus office. And if you're not sure how to find it, I would say pull out your computer and literally Google James Madison Work Study Office and find some emails and phone numbers and connect with that office. Yeah, so that will be ideal for finding on-campus work and also relevant to finding off-campus work. I was also going to say that for the physician's assistant, like employment track, that we are not talking about the undergraduate programs in health professions today in this session, but that would be where to connect to find physician assistant specific advice about campus or off-campus employment. And their academic unit head, so like my analogous person in their department, his name is Dr. Kirk Anderson, and he's really great. So I would say reach out to that office, and Dr. Anderson and the professional staff there will really be able to provide you with some guidance on that. Okay, so before you know it, I was sitting here in graduation, and I think your questions kind of fit into what I'm hoping to say here, which is that there's no track, there's no right way of handling after graduation in terms of whether you go directly into employment and stay there, or you go directly into graduate school, or you go into employment and then later get further graduate training for professionalization, right? There's about a third, roughly a third of JMU graduates do those three things, right? Those three pathways. And the key message I have here is to think about, there's some flexibility, maybe like allow yourself to change your mind over time, but to think about which of these things feels like the kind of path you're thinking about, and then speak with your advisor over and over again about whether you're on track for the things you want to be doing, whether you might want to change your vision of which of these three buckets you would wind up in, right? So treat this as, I've spent a lot of my career at small liberal arts colleges, which are kind of notorious for individual coaching. My sense is that JMU actually has just as much ability to do that kind of individual kind of developmental advising as small schools do. A difference is that you are asked to kind of ask for it, if that makes sense. So again, sort of take the initiative to get it. So I would say that your advisor is really your key person to think about this stuff. All right, I'm just going to quickly check the time, 1:11. I only have a couple slides left, and I think that timing is okay, but Geneva, let me know if I'm wrong on that. So I promised earlier, I wanted to give you a flavor of some of the possible job opportunities. So, you know, if you're a social worker, you don't necessarily have to have the job social worker. You can use those professional skills to do a lot of things, for example, in human services and beyond. If you have a bachelor's degree in psychology, you can work with animals. You can work in the business world, right? You can do event planning. There's a lot of psychology in event planning. You can work in criminal justice. There's this, again, not an exhaustive list, but just a sense of the many things that that our program is able to prepare you for in some pretty meaningful ways. It's not just do therapy, right? Okay, yeah, thanks, Geneva, I see that. Great. Okay, so I want to leave a little bit of room at the end here for questions. So this is my final slide, but I checked, and I believe that later today you will be meeting your faculty advisor. If for any reason you're not able to talk to them today, I can't imagine why that would be, but make sure that you do connect with them ASAP, right? And my understanding is also that most of you, if not all, have actually already been speaking with your advisor, and most, if not all, are already enrolled for at least 12 credits. Now, earlier I sort of did the math with you all, and I said you need to average 15 credits a semester to finish in 8 semesters, right? So 12 is less than 15, fewer than 15. 12, it's technically full-time enrollment for a number of purposes, including financial aid purposes. So that's a kind of important bar. Like, we consider you successfully fully enrolled if you are in at least 12 credits, not including wait lists, right? I think 12 to 15, somewhere in there, is very appropriate for a first semester student, I would encourage you not to go far above 16 or so at the very beginning. You can always add as you see how your sort of time management abilities are working out here, right? You can add in future semesters. Okay, so beyond talking to your faculty advisor about you as an individual, what your needs are, we have the undergrad psychology website and the social work website. When I was, like working through the application process to come here, these websites and the college website, maybe I should have put that too, the college website, were really intriguing places that I learned about possibilities and got really excited. So I would encourage you to go ahead and just do some Googling in the most obvious places, right? If you haven't already. Oh, and also another good one is My Madison. So you probably already have the ability to get into My Madison. If you haven't already looked there, I'm going to use the metaphor of like kind of checking your bank account. Like it's nice to know how things stand in your bank account from time to time, and checking My Madison to see how many credits you've accumulated and which requirements you need to be working on and which are satisfied. That is a good thing to just kind of get in the habit of doing, especially so that if you are seeing something that doesn't accord with your understanding of things, you can draw that to people's attention soon, right? Sooner rather than later. Okay, and of course, I want to say like very warmly to all of you that we really are here for you. If you're a declared psych major, please come in and say hello to me in my office, which when you get here, we'll have more things on the walls. And I will be delighted to see you. And I am sure the same applies for the Department of Social Work. Here I put, instead of an email address, I put a phone number because the academic unit head is actually away visiting family right now. So this is the phone number for the sort of the central receptionist area for social work. But for psychology, we have this one email address that filters all sorts of different student inquiries and kind of directs them in the right place. So in that email is undergraduate psychology, right? ugpsych@jmu.edu. Get used to emailing UG-Psych. That will be an important one for you to know throughout your time here. Okay, and with that, I think that's it for me. I'm happy to take questions in the approximately 3 minutes, I guess we probably have left. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for saying that. Let me ask you all a question. Is this your first event of the day? I did look at your schedule, but now I'm forgetting. Or was there, okay, it is the first event of the day, okay. I think there will be a lot of good information in the future sessions, but I'm trying to plant some seeds about kind of wrapping your mind around conceptualizing the big picture of kind of where you have to direct yourself for psychology major and social work major. Geneva, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. I'm happy to hang out here. Can you jump into the chat and let people know where they should be next, or do they already know where they're supposed to be next? To those who are direct messaging me, thank you. You're very, very welcome. And I'm not looking at anyone, so I'm not sure if any of you have video on, but I'm not seeing your faces because I'm looking at my slides, but I look forward to meeting you as well and connecting faces to names. Bye, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Hey, Geneva, since everyone's gone, I'll just say thank you so much for facilitating and getting me the hosts multiple times. And sorry about my confusion about the beginning. I think I don't know where I got my ideas from, but I just kind of overgeneralized from how the in-person ones went. And because I'm new to this process. Why do you think James Snyder coming back in? Should we admit him again?
Yeah, I think I'm going to admit him, but thank you again. That was so fun.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. Yeah. Thanks for helping
Of
facilitate.
course, no worries. Okay, I'm going to admit him.
Okay, cool. Hi, James, did you have a question? James, it's just us. Let me know if you have a question. I'm gonna have to jump off in a minute or two. Yes, you are in the same place as before, and I'll actually leave it to Geneva to say if that was correct or incorrect. I'm not actually sure if it's the same Zoom link for the next thing. Geneva, do you know?
Yeah, I'm going to check right now.
Oh, okay.
Give me like probably 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. James, I'll probably get off because I don't know the answer to your question, but Geneva is kind of a point person who will be able to figure that out. Yeah. And maybe you could check in the background the Zoom links you have as well, just in case it's a different one. Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a good rest of your summer.